Story 1. Untidy lobby. The lobby should be spotless with no trash or unattended luggage. If they cannot maintain a clean and tidy lobby, imagine how bad the rooms must be. Story 2. I pulled into a motel late at night off an interstate in New York. My wife at the time asked me to check the bed for its firmness. Upon entering the room, I noticed an obvious repair to the door jamb from when it had been forced open. I walked down the walkway outside and noticed that every single door had been kicked in at some point. No, it was not too late to get back on the road and find a proper hotel. Story 3. I think it was one time in Minneapolis we pulled up about 2 a.m. after working 18 hours to a hotel that our company had booked for us, and there was a special weapons and tactics team conducting some kind of vice raid. We quickly decided to leave. Story 4. I work with many motels for work, and the front desk being operated by a very young person can actually go both ways in my experience. Story 5. Plexiglass enclosing the front desk, similar to a bank, and a security guard sitting in the lobby. I was at a Days Inn and traveling alone for work. Everything turned out fine, but I was definitely wondering what led to the plexiglass, as this was before the pandemic. Story 6. Vending machines are unplugged, have labeled buttons, or sell Coca-Cola and Pepsi from the same machine. If even the vending machine operators will not go there, it is not a good place. If there is a pool that nobody is using but has a strong smell of chlorine, the staff do not care enough to learn how to maintain it. They likely do not care about cleanliness anywhere else in the hotel. Story 7. I once stayed at a pretty cheap hotel as a broke college student. When I arrived, the door had numerous marks on it that looked like it had been kicked in more than once. Entering the room, the smell of urine was overwhelming. I went to the bathroom and found what appeared to be bloodstains on the wall. I asked for another room, and while it had not been previously broken into, the bed was wet and totally soaked. I slept in my car that night. Story 8. Well, I am currently posting from the Hotel California, which is a lovely place. But I checked in 27 years ago, and they still won't let me leave. Story 9. There was that hotel in Angola charging $150 a night that had a bucket full of very dirty water to flush the toilet with in my suite. I checked out and slept on the floor of a Red Cross office. And the hotel in Bahrain where women helpfully kept calling from 1 a.m. to see if I needed anything. More usually, there were smelly lobbies or rude staff. If your taxi driver has never heard of the hotel, that is not normally good news either. Story 10. A funny one to me, which is probably a good sign, but concerning a budget motel, is when they wrap the plastic drinking cups in sealed plastic. I understand the idea, which is that in nicer establishments that have glass cups, they seal them in plastic to prove they have been carefully cleaned. But doing it to plastic disposable cups? I suppose a warning sign would be if they were not sealed in plastic wrap, which might mean the place is so inexpensive that they fish them out of the garbage, clean them up, and put them back out for use. I do not even really want to think about that. Story 11. Stains on the carpet, hair in the tub or on the bed. I always worry about bedbugs if they care that little about hygiene and appearances. Story 12. I'm staying in an Intercontinental Hotels group property outside of Kansas City right now that has something going on. It is on the outskirts, so this whole development is at most 10 years old. The whole interior has 20 years of wear. No one kept up with anything, and people just mistreated this place, apparently. Story 13. I travel a lot. Lobbies can be misleading if they are nice, but never if they are unappealing. The second consideration is the floors and decor. If it looks like it needs help, the rooms are likely to be worse. Story 14. The room smells like mold, and they will not move you to another room. I checked out and moved to another hotel. Story 15. As a person of color, I was treated very differently by the front desk than a white person ahead of me. I have no issues if they are rude or pleasant, as long as it is independent of race or gender. However, an immediate change in attitude is concerning. Story 16. Being given upon arrival the key to an already occupied room happened to me in St. Petersburg. I also saw a guard at the entrance door and a set of camera screens at the reception for security. That was in Russia as well. Story 17. Frozen ice bucket contents in the toilet that you cannot flush and you need to go. Carry a UV pen light to ensure there are no stains on the bedding or the bed head. Do not look too hard under the bed, which gets vacuumed maybe once a week if you are lucky. Dirty power points where you plug in your continuous positive airway pressure machine. These are signs that housekeeping has not been given enough time in each room to properly clean and hygienically change the bedding. I do not blame them, I blame management. Story 18. I traveled once to San Bernardino for work. The first night when I got back to check into my hotel, there was a child dropped off in a car, maybe 5 or 6 years old, walking up the stairs by herself at around 11 o'clock at night. She knocked on the door, which opened a crack. Someone said, "Hold on, Mama's busy," and then the door closed. They just left the little girl out alone, but later I heard them let her in the room. Later, I heard Mama and some guy get into a fight in the room next to me. The police were called, and the guy started laughing and saying, "They are going to find your crack pipe, and they are going to take your kids." Anyway, the police made it out and rounded everyone up. I hope that child is in better hands. I have negative feelings towards San Bernardino and that hotel. Story 19. When it is advertised as family-friendly, that means noise. The same with lively area. That means traffic at night. Story 20. Tools covering plastic, buckets, and building materials were in the lobby and on the stairs of the London hotel we were supposed to stay at. We were moved to a brand new Barbican hotel the next day by the travel company. Story 21. A filthy ice machine is a clear indication of cleaning and maintenance practices. Unfortunately, you are probably already checked in and walking to your room by that point. Story 22. Not really a red flag, more of a general habit. No matter how fancy the hotel is, I always pull the sheets back at the headboard and footboard to check for bedbug spots. I don't even set my bag down on the bed until I have checked. Story 23. At check-in, the room contract has a 29-day limit for stay in bold letters. Also, the light switch for the bathroom is a rotating mechanical timer with a maximum of 5 minutes. Story 24. My work once put me in a pretty interesting place. The keycard sleeve told me to never unlock my door if I wasn't sure who was on the other end. Unfortunately, my deadbolt had already been kicked in. Story 25. Some things that can tip you off in the lobby are generally unclean conditions, such as stained furniture or rugs and flooring, sticky counters at check-in, and an unwelcoming attitude from the staff. The hotel industry is expected to pride itself on making a good first impression since the lobby represents the quality of the rooms. If the first things the guests see are a dirty, poorly stocked lobby and rude staff, that sets a negative tone for the entire stay. Story 26. I spent a total of 4 months at one hotel over a 7-month period. I was there so often that I would get the same room twice. There was trash in the same spot every time I had the same room. Story 27. The lobby looks a lot different than what was shown in the advertisements. I'm not talking about festive decor or anything like that, but it is completely different. Story 28. The front desk is outside smoking. You walk in and have to go get them to check you in. I wish back then I had the money for a better hotel, but it is now one of those stories you laugh about with your partner. Story 29. I always check the sheets first and last holidays. I really found something. Hair and a dried crusty stain of body fluid, which I guess is sperm. I went to the reception, and they told me I could have a clean sheet the next day because they didn't have any yet. I had to sleep on a towel that night. It was disgusting. Story 30. Arrived at 1 a.m. early Saturday morning, unable to enter the hotel until the heavily armed and vested security officer finished his conversation with some ladies who insisted on being let in because their brother was staying at the hotel and shooed away another group of boisterous young men. We were not allowed in until we showed our reservation. Had I not stayed at the property twice before without issue, I might have been tempted to go elsewhere. On one hand, I felt pretty safe once inside, but it made me wonder about the safety of the surrounding areas. Story 31. This was around 18 years ago when I was 18 and going to a trade show in Las Vegas. I couldn't find anywhere that allowed people under 21 to book a room, but one random hotel off the strip said 18. I paid for it online in full. When I showed up, the bars were at the front desk. The receptionist checked my identification and said, "Oh, you're not 21?" I replied. "The website said 18. The receptionist responded, "Oh, you paid in full already? Here is your key." There were bullet holes in the wall and what looked to be blood stains on the carpet. I had to stay there for a week. I still can't believe my mom let me go to Las Vegas as an 18-year-old by myself. I ended up going to that trade show for 10 more years, but stayed at other places on the strip. However, when I hear about a poor quality hotel, that one immediately flashes in my mind like post-traumatic stress disorder. Story 32. Aside from the jokes and obvious red flags, I would say hotel brand matters to a degree. In the United States at least, if staying at a chain-operated hotel, many are better than others and price can be reflective of this too. For example, chains like Super 8 and Howard Johnson are generally going to be older properties and may lack maintenance and cut corners on things like renovations, but pass that along as a cheaper rental rate. Meanwhile, brands like Intercontinental Hotels Group, which includes Holiday Inn, tend to average around $100 to $200, but typically have nicer, newer renovations with better amenities. Other brands like Oyo seem to be the slim lords of hotels, simply buying older properties and running them into the ground. That said, any hotel can be bad if left without proper management. Always check for signs of bedbugs along the edge of the mattress before bringing in your belongings, and generally assess the location of the hotel along with reviews. I find ratings of 4.3 stars or higher on Google reviews to be a good starting point for identifying a potentially good hotel, but I recommend reading a few of the negative or mid-range star reviews to get an idea if there are repeated complaints. Story 33. There is a strong smell of male cologne in the room. It is the smell that bedbugs give off. I had an experience once in Billings, Montana, and we conducted the usual search of the beds to find several bedbugs. We walked out. Story 34. When you read reviews of the hotel and the owner or manager replies to them, whether good or bad, do not bother staying there. It is more than likely going to be a horrible hotel based on my experience. Story 35. A red flag occurs when I travel with my dog and she shows excessive interest in the carpet. It usually indicates that it has not been washed in a long time. Story 36. Someone else was already in your room, as some friends experienced when we all checked in. I also had to help the manager break into a room when the lock failed. He and another employee spent 30 minutes trying to drill out the lock after needlessly and poorly removing all the door trim. I finally stepped in and asked if they wanted help, and I opened it within a minute. Story 37. I booked a hotel in one of the more vibrant neighborhoods in Paris once. The rat was an obvious red flag, still friendlier than the lobby personnel, though. Story 38. When half the patrons are wearing ankle monitors. It happened to me during a layover in Miami. Crazy stuff. I avoid Miami like the plague now when flying. Story 39. Metal bars on the windows and doors. Yes, I had to stay the night. I left at 6 a.m. to the sounds of gunshots and police sirens before we made it to the car. Story 40. Wow, I have to say you all have been in some seedy places. I was going to say trash or empty fast food containers littering the parking lot, but I think now perhaps I am being a little picky. Story 41. Skanky individuals loitering on the street corners by the hotel when you were looking for a parking place. Work sent me to Luxembourg for a few days. The first night, I drove around looking for the hotel, reservation in hand. I drove once around the block, looking for the hotel, and noticed the individuals. A second trip around the block was necessary because I didn't see the hotel squeezed in between other businesses the first time. The individuals started taking notice. A third time around the block was needed because now I knew where the hotel was, but I still needed a parking spot. The individuals began walking up to the car at the intersection. I kept the windows up and did not ask for directions. I spent a couple of nights in the hotel, but I tried to always be back in the room before evening when they all started staking out their areas. Story 42. If the crew from the television show Cops is checking in ahead of you, this actually happened to me at a motel on a car trip. I decided to keep driving for a bit longer. Story 43. When they ask for the identification of the other person checking in with you, it is none of their business, and no hotel has ever required this of me before or since. It turns out that Motel 6 was funneling the names daily to immigration. Story 44. They are owned by Marriott. It used to be a great brand and has just completely torpedoed itself into the dumpster. Story 45. If it is cheap and there is a white person behind the desk, leave. Go find one with an Indian person. You will thank me later. As for more expensive places, I have nothing. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.